you stop?
You know, look, I think inequality can be measured in a variety of ways. Obviously, income inequality and wealth inequality is in some ways the easiest measurement. And there is no doubt we have become more economically unequal in recent years. Now, to some extent, that's because of the explosion in success and the acquisition of personal wealth because of technology. It has driven a big increase in the numbers of very successful people. But the real problem is not that we have successful people. I'm all for successful people. I want more successful people. The problem is that our system has not adjusted in ways to bring others along so that they can feel that they too are sharing in success. You know, just look back on the 90s, you know, which I do because it wasn't that long ago. Although sometimes I feel like I'm talking about ancient history when I reference it. We had, in 8 years, 23 million new jobs. A lot of that driven by technology, but I would argue a lot of it driven by government policy. You know, my husband raised taxes on well-off people and had huge increases in the earned income tax credit and creating, you know, more programs to try to lift people up. So at the end of those 8 years, we had increases in income for everybody, not just people at the top. Middle-class families, working families, poor families, more people lifted out of poverty than any time in recent history. The median family income in those 8 years went up 17%. The median African-American family income went up 33%. It started at a lower base, but it went up higher because there were more good jobs, and there was also a set of policies that helped people on the lower end of the income scale keep more of what they earned so that they had a chance to begin to amass some wealth, you know, buy that house. And unfortunately, what we saw after George W. Bush came into office was a reversal of a lot of those policies that supported the middle and the bottom. So we've got to get back to supporting. And there are lots of things that can be looked at. There were some good things at the end of last year that you know, came out of a messy compromise between, you know, the Republicans and the Democrats and the White House. But that's the way legislation happens. It is like watching, you know, sausage being made. And there was an increase in the earned income tax credit, and there were some other positive steps taken. Some bad things, in my view, but nevertheless, that was where we ended up. So I think we have to focus on income inequality, but we also have to recognize education inequality, like what I just referenced, and there still are big disparities in access to health care. And family stability, family formation, family support is a big source of inequality. You know, well-off people, well-educated people, we are marrying each other, right? And as we marry each other, we become wealthier and better off and more likely to keep moving up the ladder. And marriage is really being either postponed or avoided in a lot of families that are struggling. And a lot of it has to do with the lack of good jobs and the purpose and dignity of work. And so part of what we've got to figure out is how do we create more good jobs? And maybe the government does have to play more of a role, particularly for jobs that are not as skilled, and yet people have to work. Because otherwise, you end up with what I was telling you about earlier, with people dying younger and younger, and my husband says it's from a broken heart. You know, the death certificate may say diabetes or heart disease or maybe overdose, but it's from a broken heart. And so part of the challenge is how we use the tax system, we use other incentives to get people up from the bottom. And that's, you know, another area where I'm doing a lot of thinking and soliciting of ideas about what will work, and then we have to make education work better for poor kids, health work better for poor families. We've got to deal with the reforms needed in the criminal justice system and the incarceration system, and, you know, there's a whole constellation of issues. But if we don't tackle this, we will not recognize our country in the next decade or two.
Hillary, I want to just thank you so much for coming.